Okay, boys and girls, let's listen very quietly because this is a story. Okay, there's no music. It's a very beautiful story about 3 little trees. Okay, students, you can take positions. This is the story of the 3 trees. Once upon a time, on a high mountain top, 3 little trees would dream about what they wanted to be when they grew up. The first little tree looked up to the stars, twinkling like diamonds above. I want to hold a great treasure and be the most beautiful treasure chest in the whole world. The second little tree looked at a small stream trickling nearby and said, I want to be a strong sailing ship and carry powerful kings. The third little tree looked down into the valley below and said, I never want to leave this mountaintop. I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they will raise their eyes to heaven and think of God. Years had passed, and the trees grew very tall. One day, some woodcutters climbed the mountain. They looked at the first tree and said, This tree is so beautiful. And with the swoop of his axe, the first tree fell. Then he saw the second tree and said, This tree looks so strong. And with the swoop of his axe, the second tree fell. The third tree felt her heart sink when the woodcutter looked her way. It stood straight and tall and pointed bravely to heaven. The woodcutter came along, and with the swoop of his axe, the third tree also came down. The first tree was fashioned into a small feed box for animals. The second tree was built into a small boat and was taken to a lake. The third tree was chopped up and thrown into a lumber pile. Long years had passed, and the 3 trees had nearly forgotten their dreams. But one night, starlight poured into the stable where the manger was being used. A young woman had just given birth to a baby boy and was looking for a place to lay him. This manger is so beautiful, said the woman. She gently laid the baby in the manger. And the first tree knew that it was carrying the greatest treasure in the world. Late one night, a man and his friends climbed into an old fishing boat. They quickly fell asleep while the second tree sailed away very quietly. Soon, a storm formed over the lake, and the second tree feared that it would not be strong enough to withstand the storm. But a young man stood up in the midst and commanded the storm to be silent. And it was instantly silent. At that moment, the second tree knew that it was carrying the King of heaven and earth. One Friday morning, the third tree was startled when it was yanked from the lumber pile. It was hastily made into a cross and was put onto the shoulders of a man forced to carry the heavy cross to the mountaintop. He was nailed to the cross and crucified. A storm arose, and the terror of God descended on that mountaintop in the form of an earthquake. The tree was filled with shame and sadness. 2 days later, on Sunday morning, the man was crucified. He was resurrected and came back to life just as he claimed he would. In that moment, God had redeemed everything that had gone so terribly wrong in the world and included the dream of those 3 trees. He made the first tree beautiful again. He made the second tree strong once more. And each time anyone looked upon the third tree, they raised their eyes to heaven and thought of God. The end.